The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us. Lord, so often we focus on your cross. We see it at church. We see it around people's necks. We see it in the things that decorate our lives. At the same time, we remember it was an instrument of torture, a point of great suffering for you. We also remember that you say to take up our cross and follow you. May we think of the weight of what that really means. And may we follow you with the strength that you showed on that same cross. In your Son's name we pray.
Amen. Boy, that's a tall order.
That's a tall order. It is a tall order. But that's what we get to read in the gospel today, so I figured we would do a little bit of that. All right, let's just start off with Jeremiah. Bill, could you read Jeremiah for us, please?
Thank you. A reading from the book of Jeremiah. O Lord, remember me and visit me, and bring down retribution for me on my persecutors. In your forbearance, do not take me away. Know that on your account I suffer insult. Your words were found, and I ate them, and your words became to me the joy and the delight of my heart. For I am called by your name, O Lord, God of hosts. I did not sit in the company of merrymakers, nor did I rejoice. Under the weight of your hand I sat alone, for you had filled me with indignation. Why is my pain unceasing, my wound incurable, refusing to be healed? Truly, you are to me like a deceitful brook, like waters that fail. Therefore, thus says the Lord, if you turn back, I will take you back. You shall stand before me. If you utter what is precious and not what is worthless, you shall serve as my mouth. It is they who will turn to you, not you who will turn to them. And I will make you to this people a fortified wall of bronze. They will fight against you, but they shall not prevail over you. For I am with you to save you and deliver you, says the Lord. I will deliver you out of the hand of the wicked and redeem you from the grasp of the ruthless. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Thank you. Jeremiah was a prophet in the time before the Babylonian captivity, so part of what goes into this is his warnings and his worries about all that. Part of what goes into it, as Bill was reading, is his own call, that he ate the words, called by his name. At the same time, he feels under the weight of God's hand, that people aren't doing it and aren't following. But I love the words, it is not you that will turn to them, but they that will turn to you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of that steadfastness in this. So this, I think, represents certainly Jeremiah's personal struggle, but I think it can also represent the struggle of the church in the world. I think it can represent the struggles that we have when we feel called, when we feel uncertain, when we need to have some encouragement of our own, that we might become a fortified wall of bronze. That's an interesting comparison. What comments, what questions do y'all have about Jeremiah?
Seeking.
feel his frustration and all here, but there are things in my life that are less than pleasant, less than happy right now, and you can just feel his frustration, yet his desire to continue going forward.
This desire, but also, in terms of the frustration, you are to me like a deceitful brook.
Yeah.
I mean, that's almost on the verge of cuss words right there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like waters that fail, where are you? You ask me to do these things. It's like the words of that song, my God, why have you forsaken me? It's the same type of thing that, but again, I think that's part of the human condition. We do feel like God is far away, or we feel abandoned, or we feel forsaken. Alone, yeah,
Which he must have felt.
he did. I think he did.
And it says, if you turn back, I will take you back, and you shall stand before me. So God is always there for us.
But that's the prodigal son parable in a nutshell, right?
Yep.
If you turn back, I will take you back. And Jesus lived those words for the people who turned back, who came to him. Some were Gentiles, some were people, outside of Israel. The Syrophoenician woman, a lot of those stories we've heard recently, who come and seek him out.
And I like that, if you utter what is precious and not what is worthless, you shall serve as my mouth. No more trash talk.
For empty platitudes, if they're just sort of hollow, blah, 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 blah. Yeah,
Really ground action.
yeah, that's right. So we all have this one under control? Phil, we got it, not anything yet? John, you'd add to this?
Well, you already mentioned it, but the deceitful growth part got me. Jeremiah was that low. He was in pain. He was being insulted. He had lost his faith. If I read the way I read it. And then, God says, oh, take it easy. It's going to be all right. And he believed him. And that's something that we all have to learn to do, I think, is to trust that God's words are true. And when he says that he is with us, he is with us.
In some ways, this sounds like some of the grumbling the Israelites had in the desert for 40 years. It is just that, when you were saying that, it made me think of all that grumbling. We want things to be easy peasy with God.
We do.
Smooth sailing.
Mm-hmm.
He's in a very dark place. Really very dark. And but he starts out with asking for retribution because of all of his pain and blaming God. And God doesn't give him retribution. He says, stick with me and I'll deliver you. They will come to you. He's not gonna, he's not doing retribution. He's strengthening him and faith and delivering from hands of the wicked and making him more persuasive. But he's down at the bottom of the barrel.
Well, a lot of times we have to get there before we'll let our stubborn egos listen to God.
That's what 12 steppers call the rock bottom.
Yeah.
Well, as it often is in the lectionary, the themes of the psalm are usually the same kind of themes in the first lesson. So let's, those of us in the room, just given the echo that we get with Zoom, those of us in the room, let's read this, men on the odd verses, women on the even verses. Give judgment for me, O Lord, for I have lived with integrity. I have trusted in the Lord and have not faltered.
Test me, O Lord, and try me. Examine my heart and my mind.
For your love is before my eyes. I have walked faithfully with you.
I have not sat with the worthless, nor do I consort with the deceitful.
I have hated the company of evildoers. I will not sit down with the wicked.
I will wash my hands in innocence, O Lord, that I may go in procession round your altar.
Singing aloud a song of thanksgiving and recounting all your wonderful deeds.
Lord, I love the house in which you dwell, and the place where your word resides.
Excellent. So yeah, some of the same things, sort of test me and try me. I have walked faithfully with you. I have not sat with the worthless. All these other type of things, which Jeremiah might have said, and what people were expecting of the Messiah. But Jesus did, quote unquote, consult with the deceitful or sat with the worthless, at least those in people's eyes. So this was a little something different when it came to what the Messiah was, and why Jesus received some criticism from Pharisees and other places. Why do you sit with tax collectors, prostitutes? Why do you hang out with these people?
Yeah, it's like a sales pitch. Self-aggrandizement.
And the psalmist was a person of strength in this one. The second verse, test me, O Lord, and try me, examine my heart, my mind. I would have trouble praying that.
Yes.
I'm not sure I really want to be examined nor tested, because so often we fail.
And certainly in verse 3, this is one of the things we all try to do, right? To walk faithfully with God. I have walked faithfully with you. Collins, you're still on mute.
You're on mute.
Need a translator, Collins.
Muted. Okay, that's not working.
Can't hear you.
Collins, you're muted.
I've got it now. It's very difficult on these iPhones to find it. Thank you. Rob, in verse 7, you have the third method of how to give thanks. Verse 7 says, sing aloud a song of thanksgiving. The traditional, easiest way we give thanks is to just simply say it. However, hopefully we have migrated to writing thanks and sending our thanks in written form. And in this, we have the third method of giving thanks, and that is singing. And while you probably are not familiar with it, I'll give you, if you pay attention, the fourth way to give thanks. Ready?
Yeah. Hello, kiss. Sign language.
Exactly. Who said sign language?
There
Hey,
you go.
And Laura.
Well, all right. Well, that was it. I was signing thanks, and the sign language symbol for giving thanks is to touch your lips and to extend your fingers forward to the person and to lip sync the word thanks. And if I were to do that in Spanish, I would do this. So thank you all for hearing my 4 ways to give thanks.
Thank you for sharing it.
Laura,
I thank Collins for that information. He's always got good stuff to say. As we've noted, the psalm comes from the Book of Common Prayer. If you look at a different version, I looked at the New Revised Standard Version. In verse 1, instead of give judgment, the word is vindicate. And this is give judgment for me, vindicate me, clear me, justify me, exonerate me, absolve me. All of the synonyms that you could put in there. This is quite a big request that the psalmist is asking of the Lord. It's pretty all-encompassing to be vindicated. That's it.
Martin, thank you.
I feel like the psalmist, he's feeling like he's got his act together and he's really self-content. And, he's already perfected and he's asking God to verify it, which is just absolutely extraordinary. It runs so counter to, judge not lest you be not judged. I mean, he's sitting in a position where he's just feeling great about the world and his position in it, and he's not worthless or deceitful or any of these evil things. He's pretty darn perfect. I find it off-putting, extraordinarily so.
Mm-hmm.
Right, it flies in the face in those ways of one of the simple parts of the Lord's Prayer: forgive us our trespasses, forgive us our sins. This person seems to have no sense of any fault like that he would have.
He's defiant. He's defiant. He's already dressed himself in the white robes, and he's just pretty. He's already there.
Mm-hmm.
In 6, it's kind of, I know it has nothing to do with this, but for me, it's echoes of Pilate.
Yeah.
The washing his hands and then.
Yes, I thought that too.
Yeah.
I thought that too, yeah.
So these are 2 different extremes. Jeremiah is down and out, and the psalmist is on top of the world.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. I'm going to direct this at everybody. In the last verse, I love the house in which you dwell. What do you envision that house to be? Anybody's house, a church?
I think it has to do with the temple in Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The place where his glory abides, heaven.
Or the tabernacle.
I would like to think that that the Lord does live here in my house with me too.
Yeah.
In our hearts.
And that his glory abides here with me as well. I just like to make things personal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe it's our Old Testament, New Testament perspective.
The very first line, give judgment for me, O Lord. And that's an interesting statement, because to me, giving judgment for me means giving judgment of others. And I'm not sure I understand why that is written the way it's written.
I think Laura's translation helped with that when she said, give judgment might also be translated as vindicate me.
Yeah, in my Bible, it says.
Give judgment on, I'm looking for, I'm sitting in court, I'm looking for a verdict, I wanna be, you're innocent of any charges. You've lived with integrity, nothing has happened with you, so there's a judgment in your favor. It's not a judgment against you, it's a judgment of your walking with the Lord.
I'm not sure he's even looking for for examination by God privately. He's looking to parade his successes to other people. You know, give your judgment, announce it to the world how great I am.
Just about.
Sometimes when we're watching The Chosen, and I know a lot of you are doing that, they are so focused on living by the rule and the right way of doing, that I think that some of this is part of that, you know? I don't do these things because I live by the rules, instead of looking inward and going, ooh, I'm a sinner.
It's the constant conflict.
Yeah, that's the thing that concerns me. It looks like he's very proud of himself. He said, look, I've done everything. I've met
The rules.
how many of us can say, I've met the criteria?
Would be nobody.
Every now and then I fall just this much short.
Mary, we can weigh in on that?
Well,
I'll go so far as to say, I think he's not only self-confident and just self-assured and everything else. I don't think he gives a darn about other people. He and God, or he and the Lord, should be sitting around the glory house, and his job's done. It's so non-communal. It's so, I don't know why we were reading it. So Rob, why is that there? Why are we examining these?
Bible sometimes make us go, but they're there, and we wrestle with them. We realize sometimes that that expression of faith or whatever else may not align with us, but nonetheless we have it, and that's just the way it is.
All right, I'll accept that.
So I do want to point out something that is interesting in all of this, whether it's the first lesson or the second lesson, that is this somewhat of a preoccupation with one's enemies, and vindicate me, raise me up, bring them down, all that kind of stuff. And the opposite is what we're going to have at the end of this letter to the Romans. And I'll read this part first, and then I'll read the whole thing. No, at last three lines, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they're thirsty, give them something to drink, for by doing this you will heap burning coals on their heads. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And that's just a very interesting, again, Jesus says, love your enemies. This part of the turning the other cheek piece, but I say to you, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you. And Paul in his letter to the Romans echoes that teaching, at least indirectly.
And then adds the burning coals.
And then adds the burning coals.
If you really want to get them.
If you really want to get them, be nice to them.
Kill them with kindness.
Kill them with kindness.
Yeah.
I don't think that was Jesus's method, though.
Sometimes, I mean, you love your.
No, that part, love your enemy,
Yeah.
but not, kill them with kindness like that, and just that burning coal.
Right, you would need burning coals on their
Paul
heads.
gets a little carried away.
Yeah.
bit of a realist.
Hmm?
He's a bit of a realist.
So this whole chapter of chapter 12 in Romans, as we focus on it is really about sort of daily living, how to let if we're walking in our footsteps, like it says, I have walked faithfully with you. This is Paul's definition of what it means to walk faithfully with God. Who can read this one for us?
I'll read.
Thank you, Pam.
A reading from the letter to the Romans. Let love be genuine. Hate what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with mutual affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not lag in zeal. Be ardent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in suffering. Persevere in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints. Extend hospitality to strangers. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Do not claim to be wiser than you are. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, but take thought for what is noble in the sight of all. If it is possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave room for the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. No, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them something to drink. For by doing this, you will heap burning coals on their heads. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. I like the thought of it, overcome evil with good, but it's easier said than done.
Yes.
Yep. It's easier said than done.
Well, it also doesn't say overcome evil now.
Mhm.
Like, it says we're persevering in the faith. And
also the people that you are trying to influence by being nice to them when they're not nice to you. And many times in their minds, they think you're showing weakness.
All right, so this is an interesting transcript. This is from the very liturgically based message. But it's interesting. Our scriptures tell us that if you see your enemy hungry, go buy that person lunch. Or if he's thirsty, get him a drink. Your generosity will surprise him with goodness instead of the burning coals. And so I wonder if the burning coals really are not so much dumped on their head, but lighting a fire of kindness.
that's really good.
Yeah. Let's rewrite that.
I know, but
I think this is, the in-between of the two opposites that we read first. This is how to live in harmony with people that you differ. But then, of course, if you take it to the extreme, it starts showing stress. I think it was Gandhi. Gandhi and Martin Luther did all the peaceful protest stuff, and which makes a lot of sense and really worked in a society that had shame. But at one point, Gandhi said, "Give Hitler what he wants." That was, to even to go with it, and Hitler is the stand-in for the most evil thing in our mythology. Give Hitler what he wants. It wasn't tested, but I kind of think, I don't know how in the most extreme circumstances, how that works to be kind to, because it does start out, but hate what is evil. So in the most extreme, which most of us will never face, how does that work out? But certainly in daily life, this is a good balance of the two that we read.
It feels like a roadmap to living a faithful life. If we could do all these all the time, we could be the psalmist.
Well, the psalmist, as Martin has pointed out, seems to have no care for anybody else.
Right.
And
Right.
this passage of Romans, Corbell, as you're pointing out, has everything to do with those relationships. It's love being genuine, even with your enemies. Bless those who persecute you, associate with the lowly. It is where the psalmist is saying, I haven't hung out, or Jeremiah haven't hung out with the lowly people. He's saying, no, associate with the lowly. Reach out to those people who, culturally speaking, or whatever else may not be as high up as you are. Do not claim to be wiser than you are. Well, I think the psalmist is claiming to be wiser than he is, and then those kind of things. So there are some opposites in that.
Leave room for the wrath of God.
If you're living this way, there's a humility to it that we all don't always have.
Mhm. There's a falseness, I mean, there's a piece of our human nature that wants to clean out stuff that we don't like, and like, just get rid of people we don't like, just get rid of them.
Sure.
And that'll solve the problem, and ostracize them and push them in a corner, and that's, it's a very strong tendency. I mean, there's situations where I feel it, and I think this is not very productive.
I think we're sometimes like that with the things we don't like about ourselves as well.
That's self-hatred.
Pretend they're not there, or push them away, I don't, yeah.
Cleaning house.
Don't wanna deal with that.
And we're not gonna solve our problems by cleaning house.
Rob,
Yes, Collins.
I'd like to toss in this if Martin comes back into the picture. Martin, this is an HVAC message. The H is the heat. In Jesus's day, the heat was generated generally by some fire that was kept burning. And this message about heaping coals on one's head was the tradition of having coals be transferred by delivery of someone carrying them on their head, going to, if you will, house to house. So to enable those individuals to keep their fire or their coals burning. So this, while it is confusing to us in modern days, in Jesus's day, this was, if you will, the delivery of heat, of coals, to keep an individual's family warm. And I appreciate Martin's nodding his head, but Martin, again, there you're back on mute.
I've got two questions. Thank you, Collins. I like that image of sharing the warmth or sharing the crucible or something. The let love be genuine is love not genuine? I mean, I would almost think it's redundant to say let love be genuine. And the other thing is contribute to the needs of the saints. Is that the labor of those who we think are saintly, or the saints already gone? What does that mean, contribute to the needs of the saints?
Yeah, I stumbled on that. What is
Well,
that?
if I'll take the second question first and try to answer it. You know, Paul is always calling people saints who are believers. And in part of his ministry, he is taking up a collection for the saints in Jerusalem. In other words, those who have devoted themselves to prayer and have taken on some version of poverty, given up their fishing jobs or other jobs, and so need the contributions of other people to continue their work. So that is part of, I think it's really just a financial thing, contribute to the needs of fellow believers who have committed themselves to prayer and other things where they don't have a livelihood. That's what I think that means.
Right.
I think it's actual. It's not give them support, pat on the back, or that type of thing. I think it's the financial. And the first is let love be genuine. You know, some people just sort of suck up to somebody, schmooze the teacher or the parent or the boss. Exactly, and that's the point. This is you're pretending that it's love, but it's really not this kind of love that is the completely self-giving kind of love. So if you're going to call it love, don't beat around the bush. Let it be love. Let it be sacrificial. Let it be self-giving. Let it come from your heart, and not doing it for other motives.
And there's so many words for love, right? Back in the day, agape and all sorts of words that are love, right? So he's kind of focusing on them.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the Greek is in this translation. I'd have to I'd have to look at the interlinear to find out what this was, but I don't have that in front of me. If it's agape or if it's eros or if it's something else.
To be totally different. It says, give them something to drink, for by doing this you will heap burning coals on their heads. He speaks of loving things, feeding them, drink for the thirsty. And by doing that, you will burn away the evil in them.
Okay.
The heaping coals burn away the evil in the other person, which allows them then to turn to God and take on a different aspect of life.
And that, at least, other scriptures say that your judgment's like a refiner's fire.
Yeah, yeah.
And the
Same idea.
heat is refining the gold, taking out the impurity, those kind of things.
And kind of chaffing the wheat, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
As well, right? The evil.
Burning off, yeah. Any other comments or questions on Romans? All right, well, let's move on to Matthew. Oh, yes, Martin.
Well, it looks like our country's really getting into the second portion of the first sentence. Hate what is evil. We're all defining what is evil, and we're not just sort of letting it bubble up or sit over on the side. We're really into it. We're really spending a lot of energy hating what we think is evil, and we're dividing ourselves in hideous ways. I think. I don't know whether y'all feel like that's happening in the community that you're in, but I see it a lot. And it's almost a lament, hating what is evil. I mean, you don't hate the person in theory, you hate the evilness, but boy, how do you separate them? Anyway, I don't think we're having a hard time hating what we think is evil. How do we know what's evil?
On to what is good. And some people are holding on to something that I might say is evil, and I'm holding on to something that somebody else might say is evil. And it's that whole thing of, what are you holding on to? And why is it good? And is it good from this vantage point, the Christian vantage point? Is it good from some secular or some economic or some historic sense of what you think is?
I don't have last week's piece of paper, but it struck me that it said something about discerning and thinking through your faith, which addresses how do you come to know, and it suggested a little flexibility after that for how different people would come to their own thoughts, and there's room for that in the faith body of faith. But I wish I had it to read, but I thought last week was very instructive about discerning and thinking through what you're going to be believing.
And just within the wider Christian church denominations, one of the reasons we have denominations is people have held on to what they think is good. And others have said, well, that's not as important to us. We as Episcopalians, Roman Catholics, others hold on to Eucharist. That's a central part of our worship and our life together and those kind of things. Other denominations have it, but they don't put it to the same place that, that we do. Yeah. Or, so it's in the political world, it's in the church world, it's all over. And so how do we do that and get along when we have multiple goods competing out there?
Well, is there a distinction between using the word evil and sin?
Yes, I think so.
Sin is the result of evil.
Okay. So going to the hip somewhere, but not the same.
Right. Just like darkness and light are joined together, because you only know what light is because of darkness, or you only know what darkness is because of light. You can't have one without the other in that sense. And so, evil and sin are usually wrapped up, although if we resist evil, lead us not into temptation, deliver us from evil, then we are not sin. We know there's evil out there, but then we haven't sinned.
Yeah, we're not being overcome by evil.
Right. And there's some evils that get us.
Right.
And other evils we can stay away from. And the ones you triumph over may not be the ones I triumph over or have strength with, because there's so many different things out there. You know, why do some people become addicts to alcohol or oxy or whatever else when you think of that kind of evil? And others like, it's never a thing for me.
Right.
But for somebody else, it's, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Yeah.
I'll look at good and evil in a little different perspective. To me, good is being closer and trying to be following in the steps of Jesus, and the altruistic, agape love that we give to others. And the evil side is the human law of the jungle, self-survival on this end. And we're a balance somewhere when we move back and forth in this spectrum. But that's what to me represents the evil side, as opposed to the good, which is the giving and caring about others. One is caring about yourself and the other is caring about others, and we're in that balance between the good and the evil. I just throw this out as a thought.
Sure, yeah, and I think a lot of this passage speaks to that, as we were saying, because a lot of this is relational.
Yeah.
Loving one another, caring for one another, all those kind of things are in that sphere that you're talking about compassion and care and understanding, and help your neighbor, love your neighbor, work for the common good, versus I'm just out for myself and I don't really care about other people. I can make my billions, it doesn't matter whose livelihood I take or whose backyard I pollute or whatever else. I have this opportunity, so I'm gonna do it, without much care.
Lately, I've been having an image of faith, a little like riding a bicycle, that it's in motion and you're just not falling, but you're going. But if there's these other things on both sides pulling, they keep you balanced, pulling and pushing. And I don't know where that came from, but that's just because all of these are about pulling from different sides and finding a balance and moving.
Right.
In motion, in life.
Stay in the path.
And one of the things I love about riding a bicycle, I can't do it anymore, I don't think I'd even try, is taking my hands off the handlebars. Because once you get the balance on the bike, and once you've got the right speed and you're planning to go straight, you really can, you can pedal.
It's no wonder you're a preacher.
You can do it. If you slow down, or if you hit a bump or whatever else.
Or you put down for stability.
That's right, that's right. Or if you squeeze the front brake instead of the back brake, you know, you go.
We start teaching other bicyclists what to do.
Yeah,
Pitch over.
That's right.
That's good.
All right, on to Martin, and then on to Matthew.
I really appreciate the image and the goal of loving one another with mutual affection, not just with affection, but the mutuality of it is kind of what y'all are doing when you're in the same room together. But it's what friendship is, and maybe what a partnership is in life. And I love the worldliness of it and the attainability of it, and we know it when we find it. So anyway, it gives me great comfort to see that goal of just, or a command almost, love one another with mutual affection.
And this is sweet worldliness. Each other.
So Matthew chapter 16 has got at least two distinct parts. The first is what we read last week. They're walking around Caesarea Philippi, which is in the northern part of Judea. And Jesus says, who do people say that I am? And they go through that whole iteration. And Peter says, you're the Messiah, the Son of God. And he says, blessed are you. On this rock I'll build my church. I'll give you the keys. It's a very positive time between Jesus and Peter. And I think this is part of what Jesus has aimed for. And a lot of times when he says, don't tell anybody, because it's not the words that I think Jesus wants as the convincing point. It's the actions. It's the healings. The blind receive their sight, the deaf hear, the lame walk, all those other type of things. It's not just saying he is, but and this comes out in the Chosen series. We've talked about that sometimes. You see the word stupid, you say, this is someone who's different. And so Peter has come to profess this, that Jesus is Messiah, without the words to convince him, but the actions to convince him.
Alan, we'll go get your medicine.
And then what happens is, after that happens, when you think, okay, you're our king, you're the one, you're the top, whatever, then Jesus says, well, this is the other part. Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and undergo great suffering at the hands of the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and on the third day raised. That's not sort of what you expect from your Messiah. Peter still he's gotten it some, but not gotten it all. And so then Peter sort of takes him aside, as you can imagine. Hey, can I borrow you for just a minute?
I gotta straighten you out.
Yeah, exactly what it is. You've heard this. I mean, this is not a thing. God forbid it, Lord. This must never happen to you. Of course he wants to keep Jesus alive. And I don't think Jesus has a death wish in this, but he just realizes, given the human condition where love isn't genuine, affection isn't mutual, people do hate their enemies, and all these other things that happen, this is going to happen to him. And so then he turns to Peter and says, get behind me, Satan. So in one breath, he's praising Peter, on this rock I'll build my church, and the next, get behind me, Satan. If you say Jesus never got angry, you forgot this passage. This is one of the times that Jesus is angry. Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block. You are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things. And I think, given what Rich was saying a second ago, these lessons that we have, we've begun to see some of the delineation between divine things and human things, between call it good, call it evil, call it genuine versus not genuine, all of that. And then he is very clear that he turns back to his disciples and says, if anyone to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. And part of when love is genuine, we have done some of that, denied ourselves. If we hate what is evil, we have in some ways denied ourselves. Being ardent in spirit, serving the Lord means denying ourselves. What does this self-denial mean? Again, to Rich's point, we have this part in us that wants to be, it's just a survival mode. And we're going to do what it takes to survive, even if it means cutting other people off, starting wars, being violent, all those other kind of things. And Jesus was like, no, you got to deny that in yourself. Take up your cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it. And those who lose their life for my sake will find it. That's the self-giving. It's not, here, okay, commit suicide, you'll find it. No, it's not lose your life in that sense of it. But it is, what do we give up? What do we give up to follow? How do we deny ourselves? For what will it profit them if they gain the whole world but forfeit their life? And that takes us back, I think, even to Jesus being tempted in the wilderness. Jesus, the devil says, all this can be yours. And Jesus is saying, no, but I might gain the whole world, but I forfeit my life. I've given up. I've given up everything to that. Or what will they give in return for the life? For the Son of Man is to come with his angels in the glory of the Father, and then he will repay everyone for what has been done. Again, leave room for the wrath of God. Otherwise translated. Truly I tell you, there are some standing here who who will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. So that's a big statement too. And some take that to mean, well, they were there in the room, they saw the crucifixion, and they saw the resurrection. And when they saw the resurrection, they saw the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. And that was a very important thing. Others take it to mean something further out, like the second coming, when Jesus returns. And certainly Paul had some of that feeling, the early church had some of that feeling that Jesus would come again soon. But soon turned into a decade, and then soon turned into a century, and then soon turned into 2 millennia, and we still haven't received that full peace. So that's a hard sentence to understand what Jesus was meaning.
I imagine it was helpful for them in the early church, the beginnings and the work they were doing, to think, oh, it's gonna be back anytime now. You know, so let's keep going. And here we are.
And here we are, yeah. Rich?
A couple of things that bother me. Here, Peter is doing the ultimate agape thing. He's caring about the Lord. He doesn't want this to happen to him. And boy, I think Jesus really comes down on him, calling him Satan, get behind me, Satan. And I think that's a rough way to treat someone who's doing exactly what he told him to do, care about someone else. And here is Peter caring about Jesus and trying to protect him from what's going to happen to him. I find that a little tough. And the other thing is, in the next paragraph, when he says, take up your cross and follow me, they don't even know about a crucifixion yet. So how are they taking up a cross when they don't know that Christ is going to be crucified?
So I'll try to answer both of those. That's what I can do.
Glad you're the priest.
Right. Well, the first one is, if it is God's will that Jesus is handed over and is killed, and Peter, however well-meaning he is saying, don't follow God's will, then it's essentially an evil course, an evil thing that's happening.
But
So you
Peter
can
doesn't realize it's God's will when he's saying that.
Right, and Jesus is trying to make his point very clear and using harsh language
Yeah.
to say, you've got the wrong plan, get behind me, Satan. It is strong language. It is not necessarily loving language. It's not like, oh, I know you're trying to care for me, and that's really nice, but that's against God's will, and we're just not gonna do it that way today, okay? If it could have been like that, but I think to make his point, maybe even Jesus at this moment was a little bit tempted to do that.
Mhm.
Oh, I could take the easy road. I wouldn't have to die. And so how is he really have to fight against the evil?
Well, he
Even
does,
when the
he does
evil
have that
comes,
argument with God when he said, take this cup away from me. You know, do I really have to go through with this?
Yeah.
yes,
Then
he
he
does.
says, thy will be done.
Yes, he does. And that's truly in the heat of the moment. I mean, that's within 48 hours of everything happening or less.
Well,
And this is further out.
Mhm.
Jesus didn't have to go to Jerusalem. He could have said, okay, yeah, you're right. Let's stay up here in Galilee. Let's just heal some more people and get a big following and all of that.
Well, and the humanness in Jesus must have been suffering. I mean, knowing what was to
He
come,
was fully.
you know, and he was human as well as divine. And I mean, you know, you think about going into surgery as a human and you get anxious about it, and it's just a surgery. He
And you're
knew
not-
he was going to die
And suffer that.
and suffer. And, you know, so I
And he
can,
knew that was God's will.
right.
Right. And that's the thing. If anyone is directing him against God's will, it is, in the broadest terms, evil, satanic. So get behind me, Satan is an extreme way, a hyperbolic way of expressing it.
Well,
And second,
no, I was also thinking that, and we don't know how many thousand times Jesus had already said this in a kind of way, and it's like, come on, damn it, listen.
yeah.
Get the message.
I mean, maybe it was perhaps out of frustration, because then he comes off of it a little bit, you know, in the next line. But, you know, no many times it's like, I've told you a million times, dude.
Yeah.
Satan, get behind me.
We're supposed to follow the orders of your commander.
Yeah.
If you think of it in military terms, and Jesus said this is what's gonna happen, and Peter said, no, let's have a different strategy. It's like, get on board, buddy. Follow your orders. Martin?
You're muted.
Continual revelation, right? Episcopalians are really sort of have that as the third leg of the stool. I think it's interesting how our Bible or the New Testament is somewhat of a commentary on the Old Testament. But anybody who's been to Europe and has seen what they call stumbling stones, does anybody know what I'm talking about? That where they're stones set in the sidewalk commemorating the Jews who've been there, who've lived there, that are no longer living. And I think in a way the Jews are commenting on picking up their cross, their stumbling stone, their stumbling block. I think that that's a very interesting, and the Jews haven't all bought into these stumbling stones as a way to commemorate their harvest, or they're being harvested by the Germans. But it's to me a fascinating contemporary account of living into one's pending death, and how do you comment on it? How do you live through it? What does it look like? How do we remember it? Anyway, I find it very interesting that the Jews have embellished, I think, a Christian text about the stumbling blocks. They call them stumbling stones, of what that's worth. I encourage you, if you go to Europe, to see them, or you might look it up on the internet. They're extraordinarily moving when you cross them. So,
Thank you. And to answer Rich's second question, at least try to, crucifixion was a way of life during this time. And people understood what a cross meant. And so even though it wasn't a direct way of thinking of Jesus' own crucifixion, to use that analogy as one that people would know, you have to carry your cross. Sometimes you're arrested and you were innocent, but you have to carry your cross. And if he has already said, we're gonna die, and this is the main way that people are killed in the Roman Empire, it's hinting towards that again.
Yeah, I've never thought of it that way. Thank you.
Move on. Where he says, get behind me, Satan. And it goes on about the stumbling block. Is he really calling Peter Satan? Or is he directing his comments to Satan, who's trying to influence Peter?
Yeah, I think
I was
so.
thinking the same thing. If
Yeah.
the Satan within you this moment.
Yeah, this influence, this evil influence that's making you look at the world as the place to be instead of the spiritual life as the place to be.
I like that, John.
There is a phrase, darkness gathers around the light. Or the whole light and darkness play in John, and this is part of that. I sort of wish that Jesus had said this in talking to Judas, get behind me, Satan.
Yeah.
Maybe Satan was trying through Peter, trying through Andrew, trying through Matthew, whatever else, trying through Judas. Oh, okay, I can make it through Judas. That type of thing. So
in some ways, Judas was following Father's wishes, right?
Following what?
Right? I mean, because he
betrayed
had
Jesus.
to do what he had to do in order for what Jesus said would be accomplished.
right.
As evil as it feels like and everything, he's kind of following God's.
What do you say about that?
Well, yeah, well,
I mean, that's a tough thing.
He was
Yes.
a player.
and yes, it's hard. Is it individually marionetted that way? You are the person and I'm choosing to that. Or is it just because I know human nature, one of these things is gonna happen? And it might have been Peter, it might have been Judas, it might have been Matthew, it might have been anybody.
Right.
It was the betrayal, the particular act, the way it was done.
But
Maybe
somebody
he
had
didn't
to,
know.
right?
There was somebody that was going to.
Yeah.
Just for the law of averages given human nature in that
Was
way.
he following or was he evil? Yeah, that's
So the same thing with Pharaoh,
right?
I will harden Pharaoh's heart so he won't do this. So is then Pharaoh following God's will or not following God's will? And why would God do that? So those are some of, for me, the most difficult theological questions.
Yeah, no, I've thought about that so many times, the quandary and the juxtaposition of those two very divergent thoughts.
Yeah. Well, I'll leave you to ponder what this means in your life, to take up your cross and follow me. And what is, we all have a variety of crosses, not that we have been judged and arrested in those kind of ways, but we carry pain, we carry temptation. Taking up one's cross certainly means not taking the easy way out. What is it that we have to put out of our hands to put that cross in? So I don't know what the take up your cross and follow me means. But for Paul and a lot of other people, it meant preaching and living a Christian life when it wasn't popular, and when it could get you arrested, or other things that could happen that way. And so it's part of the Christian life is not easy, is not meant to be easy.
Again, this is just interesting, the New Messianic Version, that line, then Yeshua, God of salvation, said to his disciples, whoever wishes to come after me, let him despise himself and come after me. Because I was trying to find something different than the cross. The word cross.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that it brings anything true with me, but that's when I get everything else is cross.
Yeah.
I kind of struggle with that sometimes, like, am I lifting my cross high enough? You know what I mean? Like, what is it? Am I really doing it the right way? Like, the way God wants me to? So that's kind of a struggle for me.
Yeah.
All right, we are at time.
Well, thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Bill.
Good class, good discussion.
Yeah, sure.
Let your love be genuine.